All right, well, switching back a little bit more to teams playing in Athens, and so we're talking with other sports kicking off. Last week, we were really only with women's basketball, men's basketball, gymnastics, but now all these other sports are coming into in full effect, full swing. I know men's tennis kicked off this past weekend in Atlanta at the MLK Invitational, and women's tennis is coming up, and we got tons of other sports, baseball, track and field going. So as far as with the sports to watch, the ones that aren't going right now, we're going to go through and break down which ones we're excited to really, or we're thinking are going to really make some noise come full springtime, a little bit on in a month time. But for start us off, Colin, who do you got is the ones to make some noise?
Say making noise or just being super interesting.
Super
Either
interesting.
way,
Yeah.
the men's tennis team is super interesting to me. Say, I covered them 2 seasons ago,
Yeah.
and they went to the Final Four. That was their second consecutive Final Four appearance. And then heading into last year, they brought back every player from a Final Four team, and they did not live up to Georgia's tennis expectations at all. Georgia's men's tennis program is one of the best in the country. Manny Diaz is a legendary coach. And last year, they brought back every player from a Final Four team, expected to be right there in the national championship picture. They went 13-11 and 5-7 in SEC play, and they had an early exit in the NCAA tournament. They also, after the season, had a player dismissed, Nathan Ponwith, one of their better players, is no longer here. So I think it'll be really interesting to see how they bounce back. At the end of that season 2 years ago, that Final Four run, they were hitting with a scandal. There's a drug scandal. They made a change at the associate head coaching position. And yeah, let's see if they can get that luster back, because it kind of felt like since then they made that great Final Four run. They were the 13 seed in that tournament, I believe. They made the run of the Final Four. They upset 2 teams that had handled
Final
them.
Four here in Athens.
It was right here in Athens.
Right.
And they made a great run, and they brought back all the personnel. And for whatever reason, it didn't work out last year. So this season, you've still got a lot of that core left in that senior class with Jan Zielinski, Walker Duncan, Emil Reinberg. This should be a good tennis team. But you'll kind of get to see which year was the fluke. Yeah. Was it the Final Four run, or was it last year's just up and down disappointment of a year?
Yeah.
My conventional wisdom would say that last season was the fluke.
Yeah.
Because 2 years ago they went to the Final Four.
Well,
then this senior class's freshman year
history.
they went to the Final Four.
Yeah.
And this program has the history of consistently being great. I think it would seem they have the talent to get back to that level, but it's hard to make sense of what happened last year. So I'm really interested to see, will they bounce back to playing up to their standard? I think they will, but it's worth giving.
Well, they got a lot of young guys. Well,
Yeah.
last year with when Collins it was the change of power, I guess. Colin goes 2 years ago, and then I was last year covering the beat, and then even in the fall, that was the biggest thing. Is when I'm starting the beat, Colin's like, this is how scoring is, explaining everything at the college level, a little bit different compared to what you're seeing at Wimbledon and these big majors. But as far as for like when covering it, that was the biggest thing with also Paul Osterbahn. He left middle of the season and kind of left this team kind of lacking depth last year. That was the biggest thing. It was one person's out, and then right then you're
dealt with some injuries last year.
Yeah, that was the biggest thing. But now with the main thing in the fall that I was looking for was one of their main guys was Walker Duncan, and he'd been battling a back injury, and now it seems to be, or at least what it looked like from Saturday and this past weekend, was that Walker was back and playing at least a little bit of doubles, I believe, is what he was playing. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not. And then they have these, I believe it's 4 new guys coming in. At least three freshmen that were here, and then another, I forget his name, is joining in on. Came in here for this semester, so it'll be interesting to see men's tennis as far as what they're capable of doing. For me, I'm personally looking at, or I'm interested in the track and field team coming off of the men's team coming off of the national championship, and then the women's team and outdoor season, and then the women's team winning their national championship in the indoor season, and just whether or not I covered the track and field beat as well last spring. And just talking to Petros, head coach for him, and he was saying the toughest part has been just getting that first one. He's mentioned talking about with Jack Bowerly, the swimming and diving coach, who's has all these national championships tallying up at this point, and he's asking him, he's like, how do you get that first one? And he said, well, to be honest, like, the first one's, he said something to the extent of the first one's really the hardest, and then after that you find the system, you go in. So I'm interested to see whether or not one of those teams can really continue that and really make some noise. But Mayan, who's your team to watch, or that's you're interested in?
So I'm looking at the two diamond sports, baseball and softball. Well, I'll get into baseball a little bit this week. Last year, a phenomenal season that exceeded expectations with an incredibly disappointing end. Georgia finished 39-21 on the year, 25-8 at home, hosted a regional. You've got to be a top 16 national seed to host a regional. The Bulldogs checked in at number 9 overall, and then in a double elimination tournament, went 2-0 to start, needed one win against Duke in the final day to advance to the Super Regionals, and got swept by the Blue Devils twice at Foley Field in the postseason. That can't happen if you're Scott Strickland, but still before that, a great season to get to that point. Pitching coach Sean Kenny, I think, made a big difference for the Dogs last year. He came in, and one thing that he really preached about was winning those midweek games. That's going to make the difference. Georgia last year, those Tuesday, Wednesday games, won most of them. Had a good stretch where they won 6 or 7 midweek games in a row against formidable opponents like Clemson, where they swept the Tigers last season. And so I think that if Georgia can hold on to winning those midweek games, it really boosts the records. It boosts the RPI, which is a great kind of tool that the NCAA baseball uses to rank teams now. And checking in kind of in a couple different spots in the preseason rankings. D1Baseball.com has Georgia at number 9. Which I think, I don't know if that's a fair assessment or not. I think it might be a little high given the talent that the Bulldogs have lost. But then Baseball America comes in, has them at 15 overall to start the season, which I think is a little more fair, a little more accurate, because looking at the stats from last year, the top 3 players offensively, Michael Curry, Keegan McGovern, and Adam Sasser, all batting .317 or higher, are all gone. Curry and McGovern gone to play professional baseball. They were drafted, so they're out in the big leagues, in the farm systems, and Adam Sasser was dismissed after an incident during the football season. So then you've got Tucker Bradley on down to see if they can still kind of fuel the offense. And then the pitching staff is the big question. Yeah. Will Tony Losey finally have the year that everybody has expected him to have since he's come out of high school? Losey's got electric stuff. He can run it up to 96, 97 miles per hour, but the control hasn't been there, so he has to dial it down to the 93 to 95 range. And he's become kind of a midweek guy when he's who you want on the mound in those big SEC contests. Aaron Schunk, great season last year at third base and also at closer. Is he going to be able to produce at that hybrid role at the same level this year? Emerson Hancock, young arm last year, great starter, great weapon for the bullpens. Will he be able to turn in a successful sophomore campaign? The list goes on and on. So I think the foundation is there, but the question marks come in that was last year a fluke? Kind of like what Colin said about men's tennis. Last year, in recent history, felt like the fluke season. But is this the start of a change for Georgia baseball? I don't know. We'll find out.